The storm came down on Amelia Lewis like the hand of God himself, and she knew with absolute certainty that she was going to die alone on this desolate Montana plain in the spring of 1884. Rain pelted her face in sheets so thick she could barely see her horse's ears, and the wind howled with such fury that it seemed determined to rip her right out of the saddle. Thunder cracked overhead, so close and loud it made her bones rattle, and lightning split the sky in jagged white streaks that illuminated the empty grassland stretching endlessly in every direction. She had been riding for 3 days straight, running from a past that hurt worse than any physical pain, and now nature itself seemed intent on finishing what heartbreak had started. Her horse stumbled, and Amelia clutched the reins tighter, her fingers numb with cold despite it being May. She had left Utica 3 days ago with nothing but the clothes on her back, $17 sewn into her petticoat, and a heart shattered into so many pieces she wondered if it would ever beat properly again. Thomas Whitmore had promised her the world. He had promised her a home, a future, children, and a life filled with love. Instead, she had walked into the mercantile to find him with Rebecca Crawford pressed against the counter, his hands where they had no business being, his lips on hers like Amelia meant nothing at all. The confrontation had been ugly. Thomas had not even had the decency to apologize. He had simply shrugged and told her that Rebecca's father owned half the county, and what did Amelia have to offer? She was a seamstress, an orphan, nobody with nothing. Those words had cut deeper than any knife, and so she had packed her meager belongings, sold everything she could not carry, bought the horse, and left. She had no destination in mind. She just needed to be anywhere but there. Now, as the storm raged and her horse whinnied in fear, she realized what a foolish decision that had been. She should have stayed. She should have swallowed her pride and found a way to continue living in Utica despite the humiliation. At least she would have had a roof over her head. At least she would not be dying out here in the middle of nowhere. Another crack of thunder, and her horse reared up. Amelia screamed, clutching desperately at the saddle horn, but her frozen fingers could not hold on. She fell backward, hitting the muddy ground so hard the air rushed from her lungs. The horse bolted, disappearing into the storm, and she lay there gasping, rain pouring into her mouth and nose. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up or you will die here." She forced herself to her hands and knees, then to her feet. Her whole body ached and her head spun. She could not see more than a few feet in any direction. The world was just rain and darkness and cold. She started walking, having no idea where she was going, knowing only that she had to keep moving. Time became meaningless. She walked and walked, her boots sinking into mud with every step, her dress heavy and sodden, her hair plastered to her face. She was so cold she had stopped shivering, which some part of her brain recognized as a very bad sign. Then, through the curtain of rain, she saw it. A light, faint and flickering but definitely there. She stumbled toward it, falling twice, getting back up both times through sheer force of will. The light grew closer, and she could make out the shape of a cabin. It was small and rough-hewn, but it was shelter, and right now that was all that mattered. She reached the door and pounded on it with what little strength she had left. "Please," she called out, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Please help me." The door swung open and warm light spilled out. A man stood silhouetted in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered. Amelia tried to speak again, but the world tilted sideways and she felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. She heard a deep voice, rough with concern, saying something she could not quite make out. Then she was being lifted, carried inside, and the last thing she registered before darkness claimed her was the blessed warmth of a fire. When Amelia woke, she had no idea how much time had passed. She was lying in a bed, covered with heavy quilts, and a fire crackled in a stone fireplace nearby. For a long moment, she simply lay there, trying to piece together where she was and how she had gotten there. Then memory returned in a rush. The storm, the cabin, the man who had caught her. She sat up slowly, her head pounding, and looked around. The cabin was small, just one room, but it was well built and tidy. There was the bed she was lying in, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, a few shelves holding supplies, and the fireplace. Her wet clothes were hanging on a line near the fire, and she realized with a start that she was wearing a man's shirt that hung down to her knees. Heat flooded her face. Someone had undressed her. The man who lived here, presumably. She told herself that he had probably done it to keep her from catching her death of cold, that it had been necessary, but mortification burned through her nonetheless. The door opened, bringing with it a gust of cool air and the smell of rain. The storm had passed, she realized. The man who entered was the one from the doorway, though she could see him properly now. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of coffee. He wore simple rancher's clothes, mud-splattered boots, and carried an armload of wood. When he saw she was awake, he stopped short. "You are up," he said. His voice was deep and a bit rough, as though he did not use it often. "How are you feeling?" Amelia's voice came out as a croak. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I am alive, which is more than I expected. Thank you for taking me in." He nodded and moved to stack the wood by the fireplace. "Found you collapsed on my doorstep last night. You were half frozen. I was not sure you would make it through." "Last night?" Amelia looked toward the window, where pale dawn light was filtering through. "I have been unconscious all night." "Most of it," he confirmed. He straightened and turned to face her, and she saw concern in his dark eyes. "You had a fever. It broke a few hours ago. I have some broth warming. You should eat something." Only then did Amelia notice the pot hanging over the fire. Her stomach clenched with sudden, desperate hunger. "That would be, thank you. I am sorry to be such a burden." "No burden," he said simply. He ladled broth into a tin cup and brought it to her. "Can you hold this, or do you need help? I can manage." She took the cup, wrapping her hands around it, savoring the warmth. The broth was simple but good, rich with the flavor of beef and vegetables. She sipped it slowly, aware of his eyes on her. "I am Ethan Quinn," he said after a moment. "This is my ranch. Well, cabin and about 200 acres. The ranch part is still more hope than reality." "Amelia Lewis," she replied, "and I apologize for intruding on your hospitality. I was caught in the storm and lost my horse. I saw your light and—" She trailed off, not sure how to explain the rest. "You are welcome to stay until you are strong enough to travel," Ethan said. "Where were you headed?" That was the question, was it not? Amelia looked down into her broth. "Nowhere in particular. I was just leaving." She could feel him studying her, could sense the questions he was not asking. But to his credit, he simply nodded. "Well, you are safe here for as long as you need." Something in the way he said it, the quiet sincerity, made tears prick at Amelia's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. She had cried enough over Thomas Whitmore. She would not waste more tears. "Thank you," she managed. "You are very kind." Ethan looked uncomfortable with the praise. He turned back to the fire, prodding at it unnecessarily with a poker. "I will ride out later and see if I can find your horse. Which direction did you come from?" "East," Amelia said. "Though I am not certain exactly where I was when she bolted. Everything looked the same in the storm." "I will do what I can." He paused, then added, "You should rest more. You are still weak." He was right. Already just sitting up and drinking the broth had exhausted her. Amelia set the empty cup on the small table beside the bed and lay back down. "My clothes will be dry in a few hours," Ethan said. He still had his back to her, and she wondered if he was as uncomfortable with this situation as she was. Rest now. She wanted to protest, to insist she was fine, but her eyes were already drifting closed. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the bed, and the lingering weakness from her ordeal pulled her down into sleep. When she woke again, the sun was high in the sky, streaming through the cabin's single window in a bright shaft of light. Amelia sat up more easily this time, pleased to find that her head did not pound and her body felt stronger. Her clothes were still on the line, and she could see they were dry now. Ethan was not in the cabin. She took the opportunity to retrieve her dress, chemise, and undergarments from the line. They were stiff from drying too quickly by the fire, but they were clean and whole. She dressed quickly, grateful to be in her own clothes again, even as she carefully folded Ethan's shirt and laid it on the bed. She was just finishing with the buttons on her boots when the door opened and Ethan entered. He had her horse with him, along with her small bag still tied to the saddle. "You found her," Amelia exclaimed, rushing to the door. Relief flooded through her. That horse represented a significant portion of her remaining funds. More than that, the animal had been her only companion for the past 3 days. "She had not gone far," Ethan said. "Found her grazing about a mile east of here. She seems unharmed." "Thank you," Amelia said fervently. "Thank you so much." Ethan nodded, leading the horse to a small lean-to stable beside the cabin. Amelia followed, watching as he efficiently unsaddled the animal and rubbed her down. He moved with the easy competence of someone who had worked with horses all his life. "She is a good animal," he commented. "Well trained." "She belonged to the doctor in Utica," Amelia said. "He sold her to me when I decided to leave." "Utica," Ethan repeated. "That is 3 days' ride from here at least. You came a long way." "Yes." Amelia did not elaborate, and once again Ethan did not press. He finished with the horse and straightened. "Are you planning to continue on, or?" He left the question hanging. Amelia realized she had not thought that far ahead. Continue on to where? She had no destination, no plan beyond getting away from Utica and the ruins of her former life. She had a little money, but not enough to last long. She had her sewing skills, but she needed a town to use them, and she had no idea where the nearest settlement was. "I do not know," she admitted. "I suppose I should, but I have nowhere to be." Ethan regarded her steadily for a long moment. Then he said, "I could use some help around here. The cabin needs a woman's touch, and I am a terrible cook. If you wanted to stay on for a while, work in exchange for room and board, I would not object." Amelia stared at him. "You would let me stay, but you do not even know me." "I know you were desperate enough to ride into a Montana storm alone," Ethan said. "I know you have nowhere else to go, and I know what it is like to need a fresh start." His expression softened slightly. "I came out here 2 years ago to get away from my own past. I am not going to judge yours." Something in Amelia's chest loosened, a knot she had not realized was there. Here was a lifeline, unexpected and undeserved, a chance to catch her breath, to figure out what came next. "I am a good cook," she heard herself say. "And I can sew and clean and manage a household. I would earn my keep. I do not doubt it." The corner of Ethan's mouth quirked up in what might have been the start of a smile. "Do we have an arrangement then?" Amelia nodded. "We do. Thank you, Mr. Quinn." "Ethan," he corrected. "If we are going to be sharing a cabin, we should probably use first names." "Ethan," Amelia repeated and felt herself smile for the first time in days. "And I am Amelia." "Amelia," he said, as though testing how her name felt in his mouth. He nodded. "Welcome to Quinn Ranch." Over the following days, Amelia settled into a routine that was both strange and comforting. She woke at dawn when Ethan did, cooked breakfast while he tended to his small herd of cattle and handful of horses, cleaned the cabin and prepared meals. In the evenings, they ate together at the rough table, and Ethan would tell her about his plans for the ranch. He had dreams, she discovered. He wanted to build a proper house, expand his herd, maybe hire on some help eventually. He spoke about it with a quiet passion that was infectious. Amelia found herself imagining what the ranch could become, mentally sketching out where a garden could go, where a chicken coop might fit, how the cabin could be expanded. She learned that Ethan had come from Iowa, where his family had a farm. He had left after his parents died of influenza within a week of each other, unable to bear staying in the place that reminded him so strongly of them. He had sold the farm, taken the money, and headed west looking for a new beginning. "I wanted something that was mine," he told her one evening as they sat by the fire after dinner. "Something I built with my own hands. The farm was my father's legacy, and it was a good one, but I needed to make my own way." "I understand that," Amelia said softly. "Wanting something that is yours." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw understanding in his eyes. "You have not told me why you left Utica." It was not quite a question, but Amelia heard the invitation in it. She stared into the fire, watching the flames dance, and decided that Ethan deserved some truth. He had taken her in, asked nothing of her, treated her with nothing but respect. She could give him this much. "There was a man," she said. "Thomas Whitmore. He courted me for 6 months. Asked me to marry him. I said yes." The words came easier than she expected. "2 weeks before the wedding, I found him with another woman, the daughter of the wealthiest man in town. When I confronted him, he told me he had been foolish to propose to someone like me. An orphan with no family, no prospects. He said Rebecca was a better match." She could feel Ethan's anger, though he said nothing. It radiated from him like heat. "So I left," Amelia continued. "I could not stay there and watch him marry her. Could not face the pity and the gossip. I just left." "He was a fool," Ethan said, and the steel in his voice made her look up. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. "A damned fool. Pardon my language, but it is the truth." "Maybe," Amelia said, "but he was also right. I had nothing to offer." "That is not true." Ethan leaned forward, his intensity startling. "You are resourceful enough to strike out on your own. You are strong enough to survive a Montana storm. You are skilled and hardworking. Any man would be lucky to have you." Amelia's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that with such fierce conviction. She saw in Ethan's eyes that he meant every word. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." Something shifted between them in that moment. The air felt charged, electric. Ethan held her gaze, and Amelia felt her heart begin to pound. Then he cleared his throat and looked away. "It is getting late. We should get some rest." Amelia nodded, though she felt oddly disappointed. Yes, of course. They had worked out sleeping arrangements that first day. Ethan had insisted she take the bed while he made a bedroll by the fire. She had protested, but he had been immovable on the subject. Now, as she lay in the bed and listened to Ethan settling by the hearth, she found herself acutely aware of his presence. She could hear his breathing, slow and steady. She imagined she could feel the warmth of his body even across the room. What was happening to her? She had sworn off men after Thomas, had promised herself she would never be that vulnerable again. Yet here she was, her heart fluttering over a man she had known for barely a week. "It is just gratitude," she told herself firmly. "He saved your life. Of course you feel drawn to him," but she knew, even as she thought it, that it was more than that. As spring turned into early summer, Amelia and Ethan fell into an easy partnership. She managed the cabin and started a vegetable garden, coaxing seeds she had purchased during a rare trip to the nearest town into neat rows of green. Ethan worked the ranch, rising before dawn and often not returning until after sunset, but he always made time to eat the meals she prepared, to ask about her day, to tell her about his. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her stories about growing up on the Iowa farm, about learning to ride before he could walk, about his mother's terrible singing voice and his father's worst jokes. She told him about the orphanage where she had grown up, about the headmistress who had taught her to sew, about working her way up from mending to creating full dresses. "You are talented," Ethan said one evening, examining a shirt she had mended for him. "The repair was so neat it was nearly invisible. You could make a good living with this skill." "I did well enough in Utica," Amelia said. "The women there appreciated fine needlework. I had steady customers." "You could have customers here too," Ethan suggested. "There are ranches scattered all over this territory. Most of the wives would probably jump at the chance to have a talented seamstress nearby." Amelia considered that. It was true that she had seen several other homesteads during her trip to town. The West was filling up with people seeking the same thing Ethan had sought: land, opportunity, a fresh start. "I could put the word out next time I go into town," Ethan continued. "Let people know you are available for sewing work." "Would you mind?" Amelia asked. "I do not want to presume on your hospitality forever. If I could earn some money, I could pay my own way." Ethan's expression turned serious. "You more than earn your keep, Amelia. This cabin has never been cleaner, I have never eaten better, and I—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I like having you here, the company, I mean. It gets lonely out here by yourself." Amelia's heart skipped. "I like being here," she admitted. "I like the work and the peace and—" She trailed off, not quite brave enough to finish the thought. Their eyes met and held. The air between them felt thick with words unspoken. Ethan opened his mouth as though to say something, then seemed to think better of it. He looked away, and the moment passed. But Amelia lay awake long into the night, thinking about that almost confession. What had he been about to say? What had she been about to admit? The next week, Ethan made good on his promise. When he returned from town, he brought news that several ranch wives were interested in Amelia's services. Within days, she had her first customers. A woman named Sarah Chen needed a dress taken in after the birth of her third child. Margaret O'Brien wanted a new Sunday dress. Eliza Thornton had 3 shirts that needed mending. Amelia threw herself into the work, grateful to have something to occupy her hands and mind. She set up a sewing area in one corner of the cabin, and Ethan built her a shelf to hold her supplies. The first time a customer paid her, pressing coins into her hand with effusive thanks, Amelia felt a surge of pride and independence she had not experienced since leaving Utica. "You look happy," Ethan observed that evening. They were sitting outside the cabin watching the sun set over the mountains in the distance. It had become their evening ritual, these quiet moments after dinner. "I am," Amelia said. "It feels good to be working again, to be earning my own way." "You have been working all along," Ethan pointed out. "Taking care of the cabin, cooking, the garden, that is work." "I know, but this is different. This is mine." She looked at him, trying to find the words to explain. "Does that make sense?" "It does," Ethan said. "It is how I feel about the ranch. Every fence post I set, every calf born, it is something I am building, something that is mine." "Exactly." Amelia smiled. They understood each other, she and Ethan. They were both people who needed to create their own place in the world. "I am glad you stayed," Ethan said suddenly. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "That first night when you woke up, I thought you might leave as soon as you were strong enough. I am glad you did not." Amelia's pulse quickened. "I am glad I stayed too." They sat in companionable silence as the sky shifted from gold to pink to deep purple. Stars began to emerge, brilliant against the darkening sky. Amelia was acutely aware of Ethan beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Amelia," Ethan said, and something in his tone made her turn to look at him. His expression was serious, his dark eyes intense in the twilight. "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to pound. "What is it?" He took a breath as though steeling himself. "I know you came here running from heartbreak. I know you trusted someone who did not deserve it, and I understand if you are not ready to trust again. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel what I feel." Amelia's breath caught. "Ethan." "I care about you," he continued, the words coming faster now, as though he needed to get them all out before he lost his nerve. "More than I should, probably. More than is wise, considering you have only been here a few months. But every morning I wake up looking forward to seeing you. Every evening I look forward to our talks. When I am out working, I find myself thinking about you, wondering what you are doing, if you are happy." He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost frustrated with himself. "I swore when I came out here that I would focus on the ranch, that I did not need anything else. But then you showed up on my doorstep in the middle of a storm, and everything changed." Amelia could barely breathe. Joy and fear warred within her. She wanted to throw herself into his arms, but Thomas's betrayal still haunted her. "I am scared," she whispered. "I thought Thomas loved me. I believed him when he said he wanted to marry me, and I was so wrong." "I am not Thomas," Ethan said firmly. "I do not make promises I do not intend to keep. I do not speak words I do not mean." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused from hard work, his grip warm and strong. "I am not asking you to make any decisions right now. I am just asking you to know the truth. I have fallen in love with you, Amelia Lewis, and whatever you decide to do with that information, it will not change how I feel." Tears sprang to Amelia's eyes. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Ethan's face. She saw nothing but honesty there, nothing but sincerity. "I was so determined not to feel anything," she said softly. "I told myself I was just grateful for your help, that what I felt was friendship and nothing more, but I was lying to myself." She squeezed his hand. "I think I started falling in love with you that first morning when you gave me broth and asked for nothing in return, when you treated me with kindness even though I was a stranger." Ethan's face transformed. Hope lit his eyes. "You mean that?" "I do." Amelia felt a smile spreading across her face even as tears slid down her cheeks. "I love you, Ethan Quinn. I love your quiet strength and your big dreams. I love how hard you work and how gentle you are with the animals. I love our evening talks and the way you look at me like I matter." "You do matter," Ethan said fiercely. He reached up with his free hand and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "You matter more than anything." Then he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Amelia did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him. She closed the distance between them, and their lips met in a kiss that was sweet and tentative and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to spend every day proving to you that you can trust me," he said. "I am going to show you what real love looks like." "I believe you," Amelia whispered, and she realized with a sense of wonder that she did. The summer unfolded like a dream. Amelia's sewing business grew steadily, and word spread that she was skilled and reliable. She worked during the days while Ethan tended the ranch, and in the evenings they would sit together, talking and planning. They courted properly, though they were living under the same roof. Ethan was respectful, never pushing her, always letting her set the pace. He took her on rides across the property, showing her every corner of the land he was so proud of. He taught her to recognize the different birds that nested in the cottonwoods along the creek. She taught him to dance, humming the melodies from church socials past while they moved awkwardly around the small cabin. On a warm evening in July, Ethan asked her to marry him. They were by the creek, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan had been quieter than usual all day, and Amelia had noticed a nervous energy about him. "Amelia," he said, turning to face her, "I know we have not been courting long. By most people's standards, we are rushing things, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band. "I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build this ranch with you, grow old with you, have a family with you. Will you marry me?" Amelia looked at the ring, then at Ethan's face. She saw love there, and honesty, and hope. She thought about Thomas, about his easy lies and false promises. Then she thought about Ethan, about the way he had cared for her when she was sick, the way he respected her independence, the way he looked at her like she hung the moon. There was no comparison. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, I will marry you." Ethan's whoop of joy startled a flock of birds from a nearby tree. He swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, and when he set her down, he kissed her with such happiness and relief that Amelia felt it in her toes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. They were married a month later in the small church in the nearest town, which sat about 15 miles northeast of the ranch. It was a simple ceremony attended by the handful of neighbors who had become friends. Sarah Chen stood up as Amelia's witness, and a rancher named William Peterson stood for Ethan. The preacher spoke about love and commitment and faith, and when Ethan said his vows, looking into Amelia's eyes with such devotion it made her heart ache, she knew she had finally found the home she had been searching for all her life. The reception was held at the Chen Ranch, with food contributed by all the attending families. There was music and dancing and laughter, and as Amelia waltzed with her new husband under the Montana sky, she felt a happiness so complete it almost frightened her. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, pulling her closer. "That I am glad the storm brought me to your door," Amelia said. "That I am glad I stayed." "So am I," Ethan murmured against her hair. "So am I." They returned to the cabin that night as husband and wife. Ethan carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the tradition. Inside, he set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Amelia Quinn," he said. "I love you too," she replied and kissed him. That night, as Amelia lay in Ethan's arms in the bed they now shared, she thought about how far she had come. 6 months ago, she had been running from heartbreak, certain her life was over. Now she was married to a man who loved her truly, building a life she could be proud of. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked drowsily. "About that night I arrived," Amelia said. "You let me rest in your cabin, took care of me. By dawn, did you know?" "Know what?" His voice was soft in the darkness. "That you did not want me to wake anywhere else, that you wanted me to stay." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his hand tracing lazy circles on her shoulder. "I think I knew from the moment I caught you," he admitted. "You fit in my arms like you belonged there. And when morning came and you were still breathing, still fighting, I realized I wanted every morning to start with you in this cabin, in my life." Amelia turned to face him, even though she could barely see his features in the dark. "I was so lost when I found you. And now—" "Now I am home," she said simply. He kissed her forehead. "Yes, you are, and you always will be." As summer turned to autumn, Amelia and Ethan settled into married life. They worked side by side, building the ranch and their future. Ethan hired a hand named Jack Morris to help with the growing herd, a young man of 20 with a good work ethic and an easy smile. Amelia's sewing business continued to flourish, and she saved every penny she earned, dreaming of the day they could afford to build a proper house. In October, Amelia realized she had missed her monthly courses. She said nothing at first, afraid to hope, but when another month passed and certain signs became undeniable, she could no longer keep the secret. She told Ethan one evening after dinner. He had just come in from checking the cattle and she had made his favorite meal. She waited until he had finished eating, her stomach in knots. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I have something to tell you." He looked up, immediately alert. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. At least I do not think so. I hope not." She was babbling, she realized. She took a breath and said simply, "I am with child." For a moment, Ethan just stared at her, then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor's confirmation," Amelia said. "All the signs are there." Ethan stood so quickly his chair nearly toppled backward. He crossed to her in 2 long strides and pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby." Amelia felt tears of joy sliding down her face. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Ethan pulled back to look at her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Amelia, I am beyond happy. I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am everything." He kissed her soundly. "We are going to be parents." "We are," Amelia agreed and laughed through her tears. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, barely able to keep down even water some days. Ethan was endlessly patient, holding her hair when she was ill, bringing her weak tea and dry toast, rubbing her back when she ached. "I am sorry," she said one particularly bad morning. "I am useless like this." "You are growing our child," Ethan said firmly. "That is the opposite of useless. Now rest, and let me take care of you for once." As winter set in, the sickness passed, but Amelia grew large and uncomfortable. The Montana winter was brutal, with snow piling up to the cabin windows and temperatures dropping so low that the water in the basin froze overnight. Ethan made sure the fire never went out, chopped endless cords of wood, and worried constantly about Amelia and the baby. "We should send for Sarah Chen when your time comes," he said one evening in late February. "She has had 3 children. She will know what to do." "That is a good idea," Amelia agreed. She was 8 months along now, huge and ungainly and ready for this to be over. "Though I hope the baby waits until the weather clears. I would hate for Sarah to have to travel in a blizzard." "Jack can ride for her when you need him," Ethan said. "Weather be damned. I am not taking any chances with you." His devotion touched her. Even now, swollen and cranky and constantly uncomfortable, he looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. In mid-March, Amelia woke in the middle of the night with a pain low in her belly. She knew immediately what it meant. "Ethan," she said, shaking his shoulder, "it is time." Ethan was up and dressed in seconds. He woke Jack, who was sleeping in the small lean-to they had built onto the cabin, and sent him riding for Sarah Chen. Then he came back to Amelia, his face pale but determined. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Amelia would have laughed if she had not been gripped by another pain. Her strong, capable husband looked absolutely terrified. "Boil water," she managed. "Get the cloths we prepared. And try not to panic." "I am not panicking," Ethan said, clearly panicking. Sarah arrived within an hour, snow-covered and breathless. She took one look at Amelia and immediately took charge. "Out," she told Ethan firmly. "Go help Jack tend the animals or chop wood or something. You are just going to get in the way here." But Ethan started to protest. "Out," Sarah repeated. "I will call you when it is time." Ethan left reluctantly, looking back at Amelia with such concern that she tried to give him a reassuring smile despite the pain. What followed was the longest, hardest night of Amelia's life. Sarah was a calm, steady presence, guiding her through the contractions, telling her when to push and when to breathe. Outside, Amelia could hear Ethan pacing, could hear him badgering Jack with nervous questions. As dawn broke, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Amelia gave one final, desperate push, and a baby's cry filled the cabin. "A boy," Sarah announced, placing the squalling infant on Amelia's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Amelia looked down at her son, at his tiny red face and waving fists, and felt love so fierce it took her breath away. "Ethan," she called, "come meet your son." The door burst open and Ethan rushed in. He stopped short at the sight of Amelia holding the baby, his expression cycling through awe and joy and wonder. "A son," he said hoarsely. "A son," Amelia confirmed. "Come here." Ethan approached slowly, almost reverently. He looked down at the baby, and Amelia saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Ethan whispered. "Amelia, he is perfect." "He is," she agreed. "Do you want to hold him?" Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Sarah helped him settle the baby in his arms, showing him how to support the head. Ethan stared down at his son like he was seeing a miracle. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I am your papa, and I promise I am going to love you and protect you every day of my life." Amelia felt fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. This, she thought. This was what love looked like, not Thomas's empty promises, but this. A man holding his newborn son with such tenderness and speaking vows he would die before breaking. They named the baby Edward, after Ethan's father. Edward Quinn came into the world on March 15, 1885, at dawn in a small cabin on a Montana ranch, loved beyond measure. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. Edward was a good baby for the most part, but he still needed constant care. Amelia found herself functioning on very little sleep, feeding the baby at all hours, changing endless nappies, soothing him when he cried. Ethan helped as much as he could, walking the floor with Edward when Amelia needed rest, singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. Amelia's sewing business slowed down while she cared for the baby, but she did not mind. These early months were precious, and she wanted to savor every moment. Ethan was more than picking up the slack, and Jack had proven himself invaluable around the ranch. As Edward grew, his personality emerged. He was a happy child, quick to smile and laugh. He had Ethan's dark hair and Amelia's blue eyes, and both of his parents thought he was the most beautiful baby ever born. "We are biased," Amelia said one evening, watching Ethan make ridiculous faces to get Edward to giggle. "Completely," Ethan agreed, "and I do not care." On Edward's first birthday, they had a small celebration with their neighbors. Sarah Chen brought a cake, and Margaret O'Brien brought homemade ice cream, and Edward smashed his chubby fists into both with delighted glee. Amelia watched her son, covered in cake and grinning, and felt such contentment it almost hurt. "Happy?" Ethan asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "Beyond happy," Amelia said. 2 years ago I thought my life was over. Now I have more than I ever dreamed possible." 2 years ago you showed up in a storm and changed my life forever," Ethan said. He kissed her temple. "Best thing that ever happened to me." As Edward grew into a toddler, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the spring of 1887, she gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor, after Ethan's mother. Eleanor was a tiny, delicate thing, the opposite of her robust brother, but she was healthy and strong in her own way. The cabin that had once seemed adequate was now bursting at the seams. Ethan and Jack had been working on building a proper house, using money from the steadily growing ranch and Amelia's sewing income. By the time Alina was 6 months old, the house was finished. It was not grand, but to Amelia, it was a palace. 2 stories with a real kitchen, a separate bedroom for her and Ethan, rooms for the children, and even a small parlor where she could do her sewing. They moved in on a crisp autumn day, and that first night in their new home, Amelia stood in the kitchen and cried happy tears. "What is wrong?" Ethan asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. "Nothing is wrong," Amelia said. "Everything is right. This house, our children, you. It is more than I ever hoped for. You deserve it all," Ethan said. "You deserve everything good in this world." Amelia turned in his arms and kissed him. "I love you. I love you too," Ethan replied. "Always." The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. The ranch prospered, growing from a dream to a reality. Ethan hired more hands, expanded the herd, and became known throughout the territory as a fair and honest rancher. Amelia's sewing business remained steady, though she scaled back to focus on her family. Edward grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved helping his father with the ranch. Alina was quieter, more thoughtful, with a gift for drawing that Amelia encouraged. In 1890, Amelia gave birth to a 3rd child, another son they named Emmett. He was loud and energetic from the start, keeping the whole household on their toes. Ethan joked that Emmett had enough personality for 3 children, and it was true. The boy was into everything, always exploring, always questioning. Life was not always easy. There were harsh winters and dry summers. There were cattle that died and crops that failed. There were sleepless nights with sick children and worries about money and the future. But through it all, Amelia and Ethan faced everything together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ethan took Amelia on a picnic to the spot by the creek where he had proposed. The children were home with Sarah Chen, giving them a rare afternoon alone. 10 years, Ethan marveled, pouring Amelia a glass of lemonade. "It has gone so fast." "And so slow," Amelia said. "I feel like I have known you my whole life and also like we just met." Ethan smiled. "I know what you mean." He reached across the blanket and took her hand. "I have something for you." "Ethan, you did not need to get me anything," Amelia protested. "I wanted to." He pulled out a small wrapped package and handed it to her. Inside was a beautiful silver locket. Amelia opened it to find tiny photographs of their 3 children on one side and a picture of her and Ethan on their wedding day on the other. "It is beautiful," she breathed. "When did you have this made?" "I had the jeweler in town put it together," Ethan said. "I wanted you to have something that represented our family, everything we have built together." Amelia felt tears pricking her eyes. "I love it. I love you. I love you too." Ethan helped her fasten the locket around her neck. "You know, sometimes I think about that night you showed up in the storm, how different my life would be if you had not knocked on my door." "I think about it too," Amelia said. "I was so lost, so hurt. I thought I would never trust anyone again. And now I know what real love is," Amelia said. "I know what it means to be cherished and valued. You gave me that, Ethan, you and our children. You gave me a family and a home." "You gave me the same," Ethan said. "Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You made me want to live again, made me remember what it was to be happy." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the creek burble past, listening to the birdsong in the trees. Amelia thought about their journey, about all the joy and sorrow and ordinary moments that had brought them to this point. "You ever think about going back to Iowa?" she asked. "Seeing your family's old farm," Ethan considered. "Sometimes. But this is home now. This land, this house, you and the children. That farm was part of my past, but this is my future." I feel the same way about Utica, Amelia said. That was a different life, a different Amelia. I am glad for the experiences that shaped me, but I would not go back even if I could. No regrets? Ethan asked. Not a single one. Amelia squeezed his hand. Well, maybe one. I wish I had found you sooner. We could have had even more years together. Ethan laughed. We have plenty of years ahead of us still. I intend to grow very old with you, Amelia Quinn. I am counting on it, Amelia said. As they packed up the picnic and headed home, Amelia felt profound gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought her to Ethan. A storm, a desperate ride, a lit cabin in the darkness. Such small things, really, but they had changed everything. The years continued to pass. Edward grew into a tall, capable young man who took over more and more of the ranch work, giving Ethan a chance to slow down a bit. Eleanor developed her artistic talents and became known for her beautiful sketches of ranch life. Emmett remained a whirlwind of energy, but channeled it into working with the horses, showing a natural gift for training them. More children came. Alice in 1893, a sweet-natured girl who loved helping her mother with sewing. Then twin boys, Ernest and Elijah, in 1896, who were handful but brought endless laughter to the household. Finally, in 1899, when Amelia was 35 and thought she was surely done having babies, little Evelyn arrived, the youngest and most spoiled of the bunch. The ranch house expanded over the years to accommodate the growing family. Jack Morris married Sarah Chen's oldest daughter, Ruth, and built his own cabin on the property. More hands were hired. The ranch that had started as a dream was now a thriving enterprise, one of the most successful in the territory. Through it all, Amelia and Ethan's love remained the foundation of everything. They still took evening walks when they could, still sat up late talking, still looked at each other with the same devotion they had felt in those early days. On a summer evening in 1900, Amelia sat on the porch of their home, watching the sun set. She was 56 years old now, her hair streaked with gray, her hands showing the wear of years of hard work. But she felt young in her heart. Ethan came out and sat beside her, groaning slightly as his knees protested. He was 36, still strong but starting to feel the aches and pains of a life of physical labor. All the children are in bed, he reported. Though I make no promises they will stay there. The twins are plotting something, I can tell. Amelia laughed. They are your sons. Of course they are plotting something. My sons, Ethan protested. They get their mischief from your side of the family. I was an orphan, I have no family, Amelia pointed out. Well, then they are entirely our fault, Ethan conceded. He took her hand, his thumb tracing the wedding band she had worn for 16 years. I have been thinking. About that night you arrived. Do you remember what I told you on our anniversary about thinking how different my life would be if you had not knocked on my door? I remember, Amelia said. I have been thinking that I never properly thanked you, Ethan said, for having the courage to keep going that night, for not giving up when the storm hit, for trusting me enough to stay. Ethan, you do not need to thank me, Amelia said, touched. I got as much from our meeting as you did, more probably. I disagree, Ethan said. You gave me everything. A family, a purpose, a reason to build something lasting. You made this house a home. You made me better than I was. Amelia felt tears welling up. Even after all these years, Ethan could still make her cry with his words. You did the same for me. You healed my broken heart. You showed me what love really means. I love you, Amelia Quinn, Ethan said. I have loved you since the moment I caught you falling at my doorstep. I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Amelia replied. My rancher, my love, my home. Ethan leaned in and kissed her soft and sweet, a kiss that held 16 years of devotion and decades more promised. As night fell over the Montana ranch, Amelia thought about how her life had unfolded. She had left Utica broken and alone, certain she would never be whole again. But the storm that had nearly killed her had brought her to Ethan, and he had given her more than she had ever dreamed of having. She thought about that first night when he had let her rest in his cabin, tended to her with such care. She thought about waking at dawn to find him watching over her, making sure she was all right. She had not known it then, but that was the moment her future had been decided. By dawn, he had realized he never wanted her to wake anywhere else, and she never had. Every morning for 16 years, she had woken in his home by his side, surrounded by the life they had built together. It was more than she had hoped for. It was everything. As Amelia and Ethan sat together on the porch, hand in hand, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Montana sky, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home. The story of Amelia and Ethan Quinn became part of the fabric of their community. Their children grew and had children of their own, spreading out across Montana and beyond, but always coming home for holidays and celebrations. The ranch passed to Edward, who ran it with the same dedication his father had shown. Eleanor married a teacher and moved to Helena, where she taught art to children. Emmett became a renowned horse trainer, known throughout the West. The younger children each found their own paths, but they all carried with them the lessons their parents had taught them about love, hard work, and family. Amelia lived to be 83 years old, active and sharp-minded until the very end. She died peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1927, in the bedroom she had shared with Ethan for over 4 decades. Ethan followed her just 6 months later, his heart simply giving out. The doctor said it was natural causes, but their children knew better. He had died of a broken heart, unable to live without the woman who had been his partner in every sense of the word. They were buried side by side in the small cemetery on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree they had planted together in their early years. Their headstone bore a simple inscription, Ethan Quinn, 1854–1927, and Amelia Quinn, 1844–1927. Together in life, together in eternity, but their true legacy was not in that stone marker. It was in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood. It was in the ranch that still bore their name. It was in the stories passed down through generations about the lonely rancher who had taken in a woman fleeing from heartbreak and the love that had grown between them. It was in the lesson that sometimes the worst storms in life bring us exactly where we need to be, and it was in the truth that when you find the right person, the one who sees your worth and cherishes your heart, you have found home. Not a place, but a person. The one you want to wake up beside every morning and fall asleep next to every night, for all the days of your life. Amelia had gone to sleep in Ethan's cabin that first night expecting nothing beyond shelter from the storm. By dawn, Ethan had known with soul-deep certainty that he never wanted her to wake anywhere else, and she never did. Their love story became legend in that part of Montana, told and retold over campfires and at family gatherings. It became a reminder that love can find you when you least expect it, that heartbreak can lead to healing, and that sometimes getting lost is the only way to find your way home. The cabin where they had first lived still stood a century later, preserved by their descendants as a reminder of where it all began. Couples would sometimes visit it, newlyweds seeking a blessing on their own marriages, hopeful singles seeking inspiration. They would stand in that small, simple room and imagine that stormy night when a desperate woman had knocked on a lonely rancher's door, and 2 lives had changed forever. The land itself seemed to remember. The creek still burbled past, singing the same song it had sung when Ethan had proposed there. The cottonwoods still whispered in the wind, sharing secrets they had kept for decades. The mountains still stood sentinel in the distance, watching over the ranch and the family that had made it their home. And if you visited on a quiet evening, when the sun was setting and the stars were just beginning to emerge, you might almost imagine you could see them. A tall man with dark hair and a woman with kind eyes, walking hand in hand across the property they had built together. You might imagine you could hear their laughter, soft and intimate, the sound of two people who had found in each other everything they had been searching for. It was just fancy, of course, just the tricks that loneliness and longing can play on the mind. But the people who loved them, who remembered their story, liked to think that some part of them remained. That the love they had shared had been so powerful, so true, that it had become part of the land itself, woven into the fabric of that Montana ranch. And maybe they were right. Love like that does not just disappear. It echoes through time, inspiring and uplifting everyone it touches. It becomes a beacon, a reminder of what is possible when two broken people find each other and decide to build something beautiful from the ruins of what came before. Amelia and Ethan's story was not unique in its broad strokes. Many people had fled heartbreak. Many people had taken a chance on love a second time. Many people had built lives together in the wild frontier of the American West. But it was unique in its particulars, in the specific way their souls had recognized each other, in the fierce devotion that had grown between them, in the family they had created and the legacy they had left behind. It was unique in the way all great love stories are unique, unrepeatable, miraculous in their specificity. And it all started with a storm, a cabin, and a rancher who let a woman rest, and by dawn realized he never wanted her to wake anywhere else. That was how it began. With shelter offered and gratefully accepted, with kindness given and returned, with two lonely souls finding in each other the home they had been seeking all along, and it ended, decades later, with a love that had stood the test of time. With children and grandchildren who carried forward their values, with a ranch that still bore their mark, with a community that still told their story. It ended with proof that love can heal, that trust can be rebuilt, that happy endings are possible even after the worst betrayals. It ended with Ethan and Amelia together as they had always been meant to be. As they had been from that first dawn when he had watched her sleep and known, with certainty beyond logic, that his search was over. He had found her, his partner, his love, his home, and she had found the same in him. That was their story. The lonely rancher and the heartbroken woman, the storm and the cabin, the dawn realization and the lifetime of love that followed. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth holding up as an example of what love can be when it is true and right and real. And so it was told and remembered and cherished, passed down through generations of Quinns and the wider community that had witnessed and been touched by their devotion. The story of how Amelia Lewis became Amelia Quinn. The story of how Ethan Quinn went from a lonely rancher to a devoted husband and father. The story of the night a storm brought them together and the dawn that sealed their fate. It was a love story for the ages, simple in its essence, powerful in its impact, enduring in its legacy. And it all came back to that fundamental truth, that moment of recognition that Ethan had experienced as he watched Amelia sleep in his cabin, recovering from the storm that had brought her to him. By dawn, he realized he never wanted her to wake anywhere else. And he spent the rest of his life making sure she never did.